Hi guys, I'm Moon and welcome back to MoonSpeaksTV, a channel dedicated to all things Michael Jackson, including educational videos, top 10 countdowns, as well as reaction videos. Today's video is extra special, and why? Because, well, it's been a while since you've seen my face. I've missed you, and I hope you've missed me, and what better way to make a comeback to YouTube than discussing with you from beginning until now my journey as a Michael Jackson superfan. Now, I'm not just talking about your general Michael Jackson fan that might know all the lyrics to the songs or look at all the short films. I'm talking about a super fan that started her own Michael Jackson YouTube channel that can answer trivia questions in her sleep and also has a memorabilia wall all dedicated to Michael Jackson. So in today's video, we'll be discussing just that, my earliest memories of Michael Jackson, what made me become a fan, and what made me even start my YouTube channel, and how music has changed over the years, what we had access to back then being Michael Jackson fans up until now. All right, you ready for this journey? Let's get started. So my Michael Jackson journey actually starts for me in elementary school. So I was born during the bad era, and then by the time I entered elementary school, it now brought us up to Michael Jackson's dangerous era. So in elementary school, we would basically sit in class all day long, and then after that, we would go to PE, our physical education class, and I'll never forget the teacher taught us a dance to Michael Jackson's Jam. It was absolutely amazing, and at this point in my life, Michael Jackson's music was everywhere. It was very hard to miss. So growing up, Michael Jackson always had a presence. I remember growing up in my household, and my mom actually owned this exact Motown 25 VHS, and I've since got my own. This one is actually sealed and not opened. And so I would look at things like that. We would also have specials come on, like the making of Thriller. They would show his short films. You can catch a lot of musical specials that I'll go into later on VH1, BET, and MTV. Examples like the making of Thriller, as well as Michael Jackson's Ghost. And then also those same music channels, they would have a lot of music blocks, most of the time early in the morning, late at night, where they would show videos from all different type eras. And it was just so fun to tune into. We'd be like, hey, Michael Jackson's on TV, and I would be all eyes as well as ears. So back then, Michael Jackson was also impossible to miss in public. We would often go to, drugstores that would have a magazine section like Eckerd or CVS or Walgreens, and then also going to a bookstore or even a place like the grocery store. Going to these places could be like a family event, and so going to the grocery store, standing in line waiting to check out, you would often see Michael Jackson on the cover of several magazines, and also unfortunately, those tabloids. So sometimes I would just kind of pick up those magazines and flip through as well. So now this brings us up to Moon in middle school. I had started to become an even larger Michael Jackson super fan and doing my own research online, starting to build some of my collection, being gifted my first piece of memorabilia, as well as becoming a member of the Michael Jackson online fan community at that point in time in my own unique way. All right, so some of my favorite purchases are, of course, Michael Jackson and Jackson 5 CDs. And so these are not the exact albums that I bought at the time. I've since added to my collection, but you kind of get the idea. So I remember blasting Michael Jackson's Dangerous album, and my mom used to have to basically come in and be like, hey, turn that music down, you're gonna damage your ears. But I kind of didn't listen. I just love listening to Michael Jackson's music, at loud volumes and being able to point out different type things. So another fun fact about me, I actually played the flute for about 6 years, all of middle school and a couple of years of high school. And so I've always been good at kind of pinpointing certain sounds when it comes to music. So I loved having it that high to not only listen to the lyrics, but try to pick apart that background sound. So the first item that I bought was actually Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. I remember going to the FYE, for your entertainment, a store located in our local mall. I put the order in, and then whenever it came in, they would call, and me and my mom went to go pick up that Moonwalker VHS, which is actually right now still at my mother's house. I'm so glad that I was able to keep this over the years. Also, that's when I started making my Michael Jackson binder. So I'll go ahead and insert it here. You can also find that fully in my Michael Jackson collection. So in this binder, I have lyrics, interviews, the Michael Jackson family tree, and what I mean by interviews are like interview transcripts, as well as different newspaper clippings that I would basically find, from Michael Jackson. And also at this time, I had already started recording things on VHS, like some of those specials, making of Michael Jackson's Thriller, Ghost, King of Videos, Michael Jackson, etc., so that I could go back and look at these things whenever I wanted to. Also around this time, I was actually gifted my very first Michael Jackson item. So this was the Michael Jackson pink Topps box that basically had the bubble gum, you know, the cards and stickers, and it also had some Michael Jackson gloved earrings. And all of this is also still at my mama's house. That's kind of like my safe haven where I keep all of the goodies. Also, I wanted to get into something. So you might see me look over a little bit. I have some bulletins because I don't want to miss anything. But now let's get into some cool things on, you know, how was it to be a fan back then and now, and just the different type things that we also had and did not have. So things like YouTube, there's no Instagram at this point, there's no Facebook that we all had access to. So let's get into that next. All right, so the very first thing on this list is that at that point, there's no streaming. Again, this is like the 90s going into the early 2000s when I'm in elementary school going all the way to high school. So we would wait on the radio to hear Michael Jackson songs, and sometimes the disc jockey, the DJ, will also play sneak peeks of new music. And then we would also have blank cassettes where we also might record off of the radio, especially when like the DJ would introduce a Michael Jackson song in a really spunky way. And so that was something that was, you know, a whole lot different, and just making sure that Michael Jackson's music was out there, and also calling in to make a request so that you could hear the Michael Jackson song that was on your mind, especially at this point if the single had not came out or if the album had not came out. All right, so what I have next on my list is going to be TV guides and magazines. So tracking down appearances back then was very challenging. You check things like, you know, the TV guide. Michael Jackson would also be featured in Rolling Stone, Vibe, Jet, Life magazine, and a lot of those, you know, throwback magazines. You would read about interviews, projects he had coming up, his whereabouts, you know, sometimes in those tabloids and etc. And so we would have to look at those TV guides and magazines to get some of that information. And also you might be able to, you know, look it up online. We did have the internet back then, but that was one of the key differences as well. Next, we are going to talk about fan clubs and newsletters. And so back then, basically a lot of the clubs would send newsletters either monthly or, you know, every 3 or 6 months. Sometimes they would send you pictures, stickers, pins, and things like that. I was never part of one, but at my mom's house, I actually have a letter that I had wrote to Neverland, but I just never sent it off. And so let me know down in the comments below, and I'll actually go get that letter, and then I'll read it to you, everything that I said in that letter to send off to Neverland. Next on our list is album and single release days. So release days for albums and singles, they were actually different than what they are now. Back then, they were actual events. People were lining up at the store at midnight, having parties, DJs, all for the latest drop from Michael Jackson. So back then, a single would actually be released. The very first single would be released about a month before the album. And you would go into these stores and, you know, buy them. And also the release date back then was on Tuesday. I think now it's on Friday, and that's on a streaming service. And that's also, of course, a difference. You would have to physically go into the store instead of it just being like on a YouTube or having things like Spotify, Tidal, as well as Apple Music. It was none of that. You had to physically go, you know, spend your hard-earned money. And another thing, you know, if you weren't able to afford that, that could be a task in itself on trying to pick which of your favorite artist album you would want to buy over the other. All right, next up, we're going to be talking about waiting for a replay. And what we mean by that, replay with VHS, his short films, and recording it there. Or if Michael Jackson was on an award show, you might not ever see it again once it aired. You might see pictures in a magazine, but remember, there's no YouTube back then. So you really had to make sure you're checking your TV guide. And again, they would have commercials and things like that so that you could see who would be featured, so that you would be ready for that. And again, some of those specials that we would actually see that I love are going to be things like Michael Jackson's King of the Videos, where they're just showing his short films, Michael Jackson's most shocking TV moments, Michael Jackson's best TV moments, the making of Thriller, the short film Thriller, the making of Michael Jackson's Ghost, Michael Jackson's Ghost. All of these things would keep you glued to the TV, and it would be just things that you would love to see about Michael Jackson that you might not have gotten to see if you weren't born yet, etc. You can also catch Michael Jackson's short films on the music blocks early in the morning or late at night on BT and MTV. You can watch Michael Jackson's You Rock My World be premiered on 1 at Sixth Park. I remember it just like it was yesterday. Or when he made that appearance on TRL, Total Request Live on MTV, when he was doing promotional for the Michael Jackson's Invincible album, and he was, of across the street at the Virgin Records store. It's so amazing. Also remember seeing some of his videos on VH1 pop-up video. I missed that segment. All right, so next on our list is actually going to be talking about the limited access to information. And so back then, there was always a mystery surrounding artists, especially Michael Jackson. He was the biggest entertainer and artist in the world, and so just catching a glimpse of him and then seeing him like on the cover of a magazine or him being covered on maybe a news outlet, and they're like, you know, Michael Jackson spotted today. It was absolutely amazing. We didn't really know what celebrities were doing on the daily, so new interviews and, you know, behind the scenes footage or glimpses of him were very interesting. And that's actually one of the main things that I missed today with Michael Jackson being gone. So something really cool as well that we're going to discuss next is, you know, trading and then memorabilia. So back then, fans often traded physically, and they would have conventions or, you know, smaller versions of things like Comic-Con where they would go and, you know, exchange posters, magazine clippings, and sometimes even recordings with other fans. I know something that was pretty big back then, even in the 80s and 90s, people that would have recorded VHSs would actually meet up and kind of trade off or try to make copies, and then also still going to memorabilia shops and conventions where people would regularly gather so that they could get those type of things and have those rare finds. That definitely sounds really interesting, right? Like it seems more of like a scavenger hunt instead of actually being able to search online and seeing who had who. I remember back then they did have an eBay at some point, you know, when I was younger, but it was completely different to now. Like, you know, the Macaris and the Etsy's, it wasn't basically a thing yet. Could you imagine that? All right, next we're gonna talk further into just the excitement of Michael Jackson's rare appearances. Anytime Michael Jackson did like a rare appearance, like, you know, Super Bowl halftime show or surprise in an award show, it was again a huge deal. Like sometimes people were only tuning into these shows just to get a piece of Michael Jackson and to spot him there. And fans would also then discuss these moments on like a news show. You would talk about it at school or at work if you were an adult. And then sometimes, of course, that circulating low quality of like a tape version of a VHS in fan circles and things like that if you were lucky. All right, so one of the last things that's very interesting that I actually love is back then when you would go to a record store like FYE, you would have the listening booth. So I'll show you really quick. You would basically, if you don't remember, take the album and you would scan the barcode, right? And then there would be headphones like so. So after you scan, you could listen and then just go from one track to the other and it would play a little snippet. And then after that, you would, you know, decide, and then you would go ahead and check out and get one of your favorite albums to take home for your consumption. If you didn't want to buy blind, that was kind of like a good thing, like to kind of test if you would like an album all the way through. And then also while you were there, you know, they might sell posters, or of course, like with that Invincible album, you would have different colors of those albums, etc. So a lot of people always ask me, you know, Moon, what made you even start YouTube? And so my story, of course, other than me being a super fan, leads back to April of 2020. So of course, at that point, we were already on lockdown. I had been wanting to create a channel for a long time. And at first I was leaning toward like beauty and lifestyle, but I was like, you know what? I would love to delve more into Michael Jackson, for that to be my niche, to learn more about him so that I could teach it to you guys. And then also discover him in other ways that I might not have. Listening to more of his music, seeing more of his appearances, and, you know, different things like that was very important to me. And then of course connect with people when we were on lockdown, because there was not a lot of social time. So for me specifically, working in healthcare was incredibly challenging, you know, very tiring. And so creating the channel became a way for me to basically unwind and connect with other people just like me. And I've been able to build this community, not just here, but also on Instagram, where, you know, all the fans could come together and share our passion of Michael Jackson. So also a fun fact, and nobody knows this, so you're getting an exclusive. I actually have roots being tied back again to elementary school. I was on our school TV show, and it aired every Friday in the classroom. And we would basically have like an anchor, a weather girl. I was kind of like the what's happening now girl. I'll never forget, my librarian would call me into the office and she would have me do voiceovers, and it was just so fun. So I would cover segments like, you know, if it was Halloween, making sure you're checking your candy, if you're riding the bike through the neighborhood, how to do that safely. And so it was kind of coming back to my roots because it was something that I also enjoyed to do. All right, guys, so this brings us to the end of today's video. I really enjoyed talking with you about how I started as a Michael Jackson fan and my journey. Let me know your journey down in the comments below and what made you ultimately become a Michael Jackson fan. I can't wait to read. And until next time, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Hopefully I'll be dropping more videos soon and it won't take me so long. All right, talk soon.